A very good morning, dear students. Today in science, we are going to learn a new lesson, that is ecosystem. Okay, now what does this term ecosystem mean? Let us try to understand. Okay, now in the world in which we are living, it is surrounded by or made up of many living and non-living things. Okay, so living things are also called as the biotic factors, and non-living things are called as abiotic factors. Okay, so there is continuous interaction between living as well as non-living things, or abiotic and biotic factors. Living organisms and their habitat, or maybe the environment in which they are living, are correlated to each other. Okay, that means each one of the living as well as the non-living factors depend upon the each other. Okay, there is a continuous interaction going on between the living as well as or biotic and abiotic factors. So there is exchange of things going on between them. Now, therefore, the structure which is formed due to these reciprocal relationships is also called an ecosystem. That means whatever interaction is taking place between the living and the non-living things is called as an ecosystem. So, biotic and abiotic factors and the interactions form the ecosystem. So, once we have learnt about what is meant by ecosystem, now let us try to understand what are the different components of the ecosystem. So, we have learnt just now that there is a continuous interaction between biotic and abiotic factors, right? Biotic factors like plants, animals, human beings, microorganisms, all and they are interacting with soil, water, air, sunlight. We all depend on this, right? So ecosystem is broadly classified into two, that is abiotic factors and biotic factors. Again, abiotic factors are broadly classified into two different factors, that is physical and chemical. Physical such as air, water, vapor, soil, minerals, sunlight. All these are examples of the factors of physical components of the ecosystem. Whereas the chemical factors are divided into two types, that is inorganic substances and organic substances. Inorganic substances like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, okay, then iron, potassium and sodium. So these are all called as inorganic substances, whereas organic substances are those substances which consist of the carbon compounds, like for example proteins, carbohydrates, lipids. All these are called as organic substances. Okay, now let us see the biotic factors. Biotic factors are made up of all living organisms, and living organisms are again broadly classified into three different types, that is producers, second consumers, and third are decomposers. Okay, the plants which we know are called plants prepare their own food with the help of sunlight, okay, and carbon dioxide and water. Okay, fine. So plants use these abiotic factors, and therefore since they prepare their own food, they are also called as producers or autotrophs. Now, consumers do not prepare their own food, and therefore they are also called as heterotrophs. So, heterotrophs or consumers are again divided into three different types. Okay, so the animals which feed directly on the plants are called as the primary consumers. Now, animals which depend on the primary consumers are called as secondary consumers. Whereas the animals who feed upon the secondary consumers are called as tertiary consumers. So this you have already learned in the lower classes. Okay, so animals consumers can be primary, secondary and tertiary consumers. Whereas even decomposers, since they do not prepare their food, they are called as heterotrophs. And decomposers are nothing but the microbes or the microorganisms which mostly depend upon the dead remains of the plants and the animals. So this is how the biotic factors are divided broadly into producers, consumers and decomposers. Now do you know the fact? The organic substances, that means the plants and the animal remains, are called as organic substances from the dead bodies of the plants and animals, are decomposed and converted into inorganic substances by microorganisms. Okay, so remember this, microorganisms decompose the organic substances, that is the dead remains of the plants and animals, and therefore they are also called as decomposers. So now we have learnt about what are the components of the ecosystem. So briefly again I will deal with what are the components of the ecosystem. So main components of the ecosystem are abiotic factors, which are non-living ones, and biotic factors called as living factors. Okay, living things, all animals, plants, human beings, microorganisms are called as biotic factors. Again, abiotic factors are broadly classified into two types, that is physical abiotic factors and chemical abiotic factors. Physical are like air, water, vapor, minerals, soil and sunlight. Chemicals again can be divided into two types, whether there is presence of carbon in a particular substance or absence of carbon. So then those substances which do not have carbon in as their compound, they are called as inorganic substances. Okay, not compound, as element. So inorganic substances like hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, calcium, iron, potassium, sodium, all these are called as inorganic substances, whereas organic substances are proteins, carbohydrates and lipids. Then biotic factors include producers, consumers, decomposers. Producers are the plants, that is they are preparing their own food with the help of sunlight and other abiotic factors like soil, which gives water and minerals, and the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Okay, so plants are also called as producers because they are autotrophic in nature, whereas consumers and decomposers are called as heterotrophs because they do not prepare their food. Under consumers, we have learned about there are primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and decomposers we have microorganisms which decompose the dead remains of the plants and animals. That means whatever is dead, finally it is decomposed by the decomposer. So these are called as the components of the ecosystem. So once we have studied now about the components of the ecosystem, let us now proceed with the next part of the lesson, that is the structure of the ecosystem. Okay, so structure of the ecosystem, how is the structure of the ecosystem? So let's study. So living organisms need different types of abiotic factors. Okay, and they have different capacities to adapt with these abiotic factors, like soil is a factor, air is one of the abiotic factor, water, and as well as water in the fresh water as well as marine water. Some microorganisms requires oxygen, whereas some do not require oxygen. Okay, some plants require more sunlight, whereas some others grow well in the shade. Right? Now, each and every abiotic factors, that is air, water, soil, sunlight, temperature and humidity, these abiotic factors affects all the biotic factors in the ecosystem. So the abiotic factors or abiotic factors in an ecosystem decide which biotic factors will survive in it and what will be their number. So depending upon the availability of all these abiotic factors, they decide what type of living organisms will be there and what will be their number. Right? Now the proportion of the abiotic factors in an ecosystem is always changing as biotic factors use these or excrete abiotic factors. So whatever may be the proportion in the atmosphere of these abiotic factors depends upon the biotic factors, because the biotic factors use it for their own purpose and also excrete certain abiotic factors from their body. So the proportion of it will differ. Like for example, you know about the global warming, it's because it is more of carbon dioxide is increasing nowadays, just because the plants are getting cut down and oxygen level is reducing, whereas the respiration by the animals, and also due to burning of the fossil fuels and a lot of carbon dioxide is evolved. So which says that no, which indicates that the proportion of the abiotic factors will decide what type of organisms will be there in that particular environment or in that particular ecosystem. Okay, so every biotic factor affects the abiotic factors as well as other biotic factors. Every living organism in an ecosystem plays a particular role while living, moving in that ecosystem. Okay, so every living organism plays an important role, a particular role in the living and non-living moving in that ecosystem. So put the position of any living organism in context to other living organism and the role in it is playing, it's called as niche. Now let me explain to you this, what is the meaning of the niche. Now position, like for example here a lion is highlighted. So the position of the lion is at the highest level of the food. Okay, when we talk about the trophic levels of the food, always remember lion will be the highest, at the highest level of the food trophic level. Why? Because it is the tertiary consumer. So it is the position of the lion. What role it plays? It plays a role of a tertiary consumer. So that particular position of that particular organism and the role it is playing in the ecosystem is called as niche. So it has a particular niche, that means a position as well as the role in the ecosystem. Is that clear, student? So let us little proceed further. Now we have learned about what is meant by niche. Now once we have known about what are the components and structure of the ecosystem, let us look at this picture over here, which shows the interaction among the factors of an ecosystem. Now the biotic factors like the plant, okay, are called as the producers, right? Why are they called as producers? It's because plants use the biotic factors like water and minerals from the soil, as well as carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and the solar energy from the sun, so to prepare the food by the process called as photosynthesis, right? So this solar energy during photosynthesis gets converted into chemical energy, and that is nothing but the food which it is preparing. Also, plants give us the oxygen. Even during the night time, plants take up oxygen for the process of respiration, right? So this is how the biotic factors like plants are playing the role, whereas the biotic factors like the animals are are called as the heterotrophic in nature, because they depend directly or indirectly upon the plants. So animals can be primary consumers, secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. All of these three levels, trophic levels of the food, directly or indirectly depend on the producers. Why I am saying indirectly? It's because primary consumers directly depend on the producers, whereas secondary and tertiary consumers depend upon, secondary consumer depend upon the goat, which is, not goat, primary consumers, which is eating the producers. So that means secondary consumers are indirectly dependent on the plants. That means producers or the plants are very important in an ecosystem, right? So this is regarding the plants and the animals. Also, like the plants, even the animals require some of the abiotic factors. Like for example, they require oxygen to inhale, and carbon dioxide is given out as a product of respiration, right? The same carbon dioxide is taken up by the plants. Also, second abiotic factor is the water, which is very essential for all the living organisms. So not only the oxygen but even the water. So biotic and abiotic factors, that is the plants when and animals when they die, okay, the third factor, that is the biotic factors like the microbes play a major role. That means these microbes and the fungi, okay, you can see mushroom is a fungus which helps in the process of decomposition, which convert during decomposition complex organic substances, that is the dead bodies of the plants and animals are called as complex organic substances. These complex organic substances are converted by the microbes and the fungi into simple inorganic substances like hydrogen, nitrogen, okay, all the different minerals, and leave it either in the soil as well as in the atmosphere. So even during, you know that now this is the exchange of food which is taking place here. So and during the transfer of the food or translocation or transfer of the food at the different levels here, in this condition what is happening, even the energy is getting transferred from one level to another. And when energy is getting transferred, okay, some amount of energy is also lost, and that energy which is lost is also in the form of heat. Okay, now once we have now learned about what is meant, how the exchange of or how the cyclic flow, what I can use a word over here, there is a cyclic flow of the food, that is the food is passed on from one organism to another. That means the plants which are called as the producers are the ones only produce the food. Okay, now from here it is being transferred to other organisms like primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers, and finally when the plants and animals die, the role which is played by the decomposers, okay, also take up the food from this. So here there is a cyclic flow of the food, okay, cyclic flow of the food, fine. So when there is cyclic flow of the food, even energy is getting transferred. That is, the energy first is absorbed by the plants in the form of solar energy, and it converts it into the form of chemical energy. And this chemical energy is used up by all the living organisms. So when they use up this energy, okay, after digestion, okay, whenever they are doing some amount of work, they are releasing some amount of energy, and that energy is nothing but the heat energy. Okay, so heat energy is released at the different levels of the food as well as energy. So here you see that the food is getting transferred from one organism to another. Okay, finally it is released into the soil and into the atmosphere. So there is a cyclic flow of these nutrients or the food, whereas energy is also transferred from one level to another, but it never goes to sun. Okay, sun gives the energy but it never goes to the sun, so we cannot say that it is a cyclic one. You can say that it is in one direction it is flowing, right? So this is how energy transfer and the food transfer or nutrient are getting cycled. Is that clear? Now all these is taking place in the ecosystem. Now that we have learned about so much about the ecosystem, the components of the ecosystem, how is the interaction going on in the ecosystem, do you know who termed the coin ecosystem? Okay, so let's peek into the history to find out who termed the coin ecosystem. So let us see who coined the term ecosystem. Looking back, okay, new words are created with the development in science. You can see so many words here. Same is the case with the word ecosystem. So ecosystem is also a word which was coined by someone. So how can we describe the interrelationship between physical and biological factors in one word? Okay, so what does this mean? Interrelationship between physical you have learned about the air, water, soil, all these are components, all these are physical factors, and biological factors like biotic factors, plants, animals, decomposers, okay, consumers, producers, all these are called as biological factors. So how can we describe the interrelationship between the physical and the biological factors in one word? Okay, so it is in 1930. Okay, in the year 1930, this question was asked to a scientist, Roy Clapton. Okay, Roy Clapton. Okay, so he termed the word called as ecosystem was his answer. His colleague, that is Arthur George Tensley, also used this word in the year 1935. Biotic community is also another name for ecosystem. Okay, students, so who termed the coin ecosystem? It was Roy Clapton. And even Arthur Tensley also used this word in the year 1935. But in the year 1930, Roy Clapton had already told about the word called as ecosystem. So another word for the ecosystem is biotic community. Remember this. Now, if you have observed the what we have learned now around okay, what if you have observed around yourself, you will find the different types of ecosystem around you. Okay, and these different ecosystems, okay, have a lot of importance. So we need to learn about the different types of the ecosystem, and we are going to learn about the different types of the ecosystem in the next video. So till then, students, bye and thank you. So for your homework, you need to read the lesson. You need to try to find out the questions like different types of what is an ecosystem, what are the components of the ecosystem, and you can make a flow chart and draw it in your notebook. Also try to write a short note on the interactions of the ecosystem. Is that clear, students? Also write about who termed the coin ecosystem, and later on it was used by which other scientist. What is another name for ecosystem? Okay, students. So till then, student, bye and thank you.